Recording to the cloud. All right, welcome to Leon Navy. I love seeing all these new faces pop on and old faces. It's just one of the favorite parts of me, favorite parts of doing Leon Navy is the community that this gathers and just the wide variety of backgrounds everyone brings. So please start chatting it up. I see everyone writing in chat right now. Please go ahead and do that. And with that, I will share with you our agenda. So welcome to Leon Navy. This is the agenda for today. It's a little bit different today, accommodating just the large number of people that we have joining us, and Admiral Fagan and her daughter, Lieutenant Aileen Fagan, who will be our guest today. So for the agenda, we will kick off. I'll take a moment to explain what Lean On is and kind of do some quick polls. They're already in progress. So thanks to Vic. Vic Reeve is our tech assist, so she's helping me kind of push those questions. And please, everyone, go in chat and introduce yourselves. Maybe say where you are, and that's a chance for our moderator and our mentors to get a chance to see who's in the audience, but also a chance for you to reach out, because a good portion of what comes of this session every time are the connections. So take a moment to introduce yourself in chat, and then feel free throughout the presentation, if you need to reach out to someone, go ahead and do that, or reach back out to me if you want me to connect you. After I explain Lean On and give you some references, then I will introduce the topic and introduce our guest mentors. At that time, we will have our guest presentation, where I generally go on mute. Sometimes I'll come off mute for a little bit of prompting if I find myself doing that. And then I have a few questions that I'll be moderating to kind of frame this conversation about how we all challenge the status quo in our own organizations. And then I'll open it up to the group. So you'll have a chance to ask questions yourself. And then I'll turn it back over to our guest mentors, and we'll have the wrap up. And at that point, we will stop recording. Both of our guest mentors today do need to leave at the top of the hour. I might be around for a few minutes to help facilitate if there's any more further discussion. So that is our agenda. This is your first time doing Lean On Navy, then welcome. So with that, Lean On Navy, please select speaker view on your screen. That is after I'm done giving this introduction. That's your best way to be able to see our guest presenters and to make sure that you're listening to them, and then you can see what they're saying. Feel free to log off at any time. Distractions come up. I record this and then I send recordings. So please don't need to ask permission to leave or send your excuse. I understand life is happening, and all of you made some change today in your schedule to make this work for you. So I really, really appreciate that. Please feel free to chat. The engagement of the audience is a secret sauce for why I think these are so powerful. I do ask you to stay on mute unless the moderator, unless I call on you. And with that, I have 4 references for you here that I will leave you with. There are chances for you to take Lean On Navy outside of this one particular venue. And let's see, you've got leanonnavy.com. So that's for you in the chat if you'd like to see that. Thanks, Vic. She'll be copying and pasting that to the chat so you can see that. If you want to continue the conversation on Facebook, there's a Facebook page. That's available for you. And then 2 sort of special service announcements. If you would like to attend a event at the Navy War College, the U.S. Navy War College is doing a Women, Peace, and Security Symposium at next week, April 27th to 28th in Newport, Rhode Island, and you can register there. And then many of you know I'm the president of Sea Service Leadership Association, and we put on our joint Women's Leadership Symposium, our big event every year. This year it's in San Diego. Women and men are invited. It is the largest gathering of women in uniform in the world. And it is in San Diego, June 28th to July 1st. So you have a link there to register. So that's it for public service announcements. Now let me get to the really exciting part and what you all came for. It is my pleasure and my honor to get to introduce our guests today. And the topic is challenging the status quo. So couldn't ask for a better organization or representative of this organization with this super important topic than the 27th Commandant of the Coast Guard and her daughter. I mean, just looking at the 2 of them, we're seeing transformational change. And the organization as itself, I mean, 232 years old, itself has been through so much transformation. I had to go back to Alexander Hamilton singing "In the Room Where It Happened" when I was thinking about, okay, were they in the room where it happened? Because this organization, the Coast Guard, was originally part of the Department of Treasury. And then it goes through all kinds of transformational change. And then, it becomes the Department of Transportation in the 60s, I think 67. And then it goes on more transformation and standing up the Department of Homeland Security, 2003. And right now, on the website of the Coast Guard, you see that within the Joint Force, that they provide the full spectrum of engagement of as nation states and transnational criminal organizations. Just so much depth and breadth in what the Coast Guard does. And they are the only branch of the armed forces within the Department of Homeland Security that bridges the gap between the law enforcement focus and the Department of Defense. So I saw that play out on my frigate, just the intense capability that the Coast Guard brings to law enforcement out to sea. They made us so much more capable in the Navy. So all kinds of broad authority in the Coast Guard. Can't even begin to summarize it here in this introduction, but really what I want to focus on today is the transformational change that we see both by Admiral Fagan and her daughter, Aileen. And with that, I'm going to turn over to the two of you to share your story about transformational change. Thank you for joining us today. Admiral, Lieutenant.
Thanks very much, Emily. And it's really just a pleasure to be here with everyone on this just beautiful Friday afternoon. And, I thought what I might do by way of sort of starting is just a little bit of reflection on my own story. And I'm going to ask Aileen to tell hers, because she will have a very different perspective and view on where we are as an organization than certainly what my experience has been. As we, I joined the organization in the early 80s, and I loved your review of our history. It'll be 233 years this August. We do trace our roots back to Alexander Hamilton and the Revenue Cutter Service. But one of the things, and as you talked about the journey, right, in the topic today of challenging status quo, and so a particularly pivotal point in the organization and in my own journey into the organization was our then Commandant Owen Seiler. And so in the fall of 1975, all of the services were challenged to integrate their service academies. And Owen Seiler takes the decision, he's the first of the service chiefs to make the decision that, yes, we will integrate the academy, and women will be brought into the ranks at the service academies in the summer of 1976. But for his courage in that decision, I would not be sitting here today. 100% wouldn't have mattered all the hard work, I would not be sitting here today. So I would not have had the opportunity to enter the service and, serve, go through the Coast Guard Academy process. So I started the Coast Guard Academy in 1981. You can all do the math. I'm, yeah. And with a nearly 30-year-old daughter sitting here next to me, it's not hard to figure the math out.
Oh, let's not start naming numbers.
Yeah. Yeah. But so when I arrived in 81, we'd only graduated women the year before. And as I graduate and I'm commissioned as an ensign, the women that have come through OCS are just putting on the rank of 04. There were no commanders, there were no captains, no admirals. And it's now taken, this 40 plus year journey, and here we are. And I find myself, just with the great privilege and honor of now leading the service and advocating for the workforce and for resources. But it has absolutely been a journey, and a credit and a testament to the leaders in the organization throughout time. And again, I go back to Owen Seiler, who had the courage to make a decision that was not natural at the time. And it just, continues to provide benefit and opportunity. And so now I'm just going to touch on sort of being a first, and I'm going to ask Aileen to reflect on her experience coming into the service. very different than mine. So first, I nearly had my orders canceled at my first unit. It was the Coast Guard Cutter Polar Star. And at the in brief with the XO, he says, "Oh, it's great you're here, but you're the only woman who's going to be on board. And we really didn't think, we just wanted one of you." So they did not cancel my orders. At the time, I'm like, "Oh, all right, that's good." I've reflected. I'm like, well, why did they think they needed to do that? Like, why was that even an issue for them? It turned out it was a very foundational opportunity for me. But what I wanted to talk about on being a first off, I can't wait to celebrate who's next, the second, the third, and that we, at all levels in the organizations we represent, have seen women and other minorities come through all of those pivotal and foundational experiences. And so whether it's leading an organization as a service chief, or commanding aircraft carriers and Navy, Blue Angel pilot, all of those firsts that we continue to break. I have not. The aspect I haven't liked about being a first is the fact that people want you to spend a lot of time talking about yourself. My least favorite thing to do. Don't like it. But it provides a platform then to talk about the Coast Guard. And the Coast Guard is this incredible organization. And I know we've got a heavy Navy audience, but we've got some Coast Guard members out there as well. And the opportunity that the Coast Guard offers to any and all who may find themselves service oriented. I think we've done a fantastic job creating culture and environment where people are valued, they're heard, they feel safe. And that's really what people, in that sense of camaraderie and community, that's what people work for employees. It's what's kept me in the organization. Frankly, if it weren't for that just sense of community that I get every day when I come into the workplace, I probably wouldn't still be serving in uniform. And it's really been a privilege. All right. So Aileen, tell us about your experience. So fun fact, fewer than 10% women when I was at the Coast Guard Academy. That was not her experience.
No, I think I reported in at 27, 29, just under 30% women in my class. And that number has just grown exponentially. But thank you, Captain, so much for putting this together. I think this is our second official talking event together. Mm-hmm. The last one we did was still sort of in the height of pandemic. So it's nice to be on the other side of that and still stationed together. So that's great.
We accidentally keep getting co-located together.
Yeah, we've been co-located twice. I do want to be very clear, though. I have had orders first both times. So you're following me, not the other way around. But no, so obviously, grew up in a Coast Guard family, and I always knew my mom was in the Coast Guard. There was an incident in elementary school where an elementary school teacher tried to tell me that the Coast Guard was part of the Marine Corps. And I was not willing to engage in that conversation. And so I think really my high school years is when I really got an understanding of what it was she did, and what the trips to London meant, and all of that. And it's when I started getting interested in the academy. I did our summer program, AIM, absolutely fell in love with it, spent a night there kind of as a prospective cadet. There was about a week I was considering going to a different school, in which Mom was like, "No, you're not."
Didn't you want to be a nurse at UVA?
I wanted to be a nurse at UVA, yep. And I obviously did not do that, although that is a very admirable career path. I cannot imagine my life having not gone to the academy. Like Mom said, I reported in with a class of almost 30% women, and women I'm still very good friends with to this day. I've stood as a maid of honor in their weddings. I've held their babies. That's just not an experience that she had at my age. And we were reflecting a little bit before this that, she's saying by the time she graduated, there's, maybe an 04 female. I have had the privilege of working for women my entire time. I have had at least one female, if not more, in my chain of command since graduating in 2016. And I just, really, I think one of the things that has always shaped my perspective on the service is there was never a doubt in my mind that I could go to the academy, I could be in the Coast Guard, I could have a successful career, I could have a family, because that's what my everyday was. That was my mom. She lived and breathed it every single day. And, the opportunities that I have had, at the academy, in the service, I wouldn't trade them for anything. I'm so grateful to be a part of this organization, and, definitely biased towards our senior leadership. But I really, one of the things, I got called up on stage at a foundation dinner, and they asked me to sort of reflect on like what it meant to have my mom as the commandant. And the thing I would say, and the thing I think really resonates with people about her is this is her. Like, this is who I have had my whole life. She shows up so wholly as herself in everything she does. She leads, with the same like love and care that she puts into the family as she does into the workforce. And it's just really wonderful to see that and to see all the changes she's trying to usher in this new era. And I'm just, very grateful to be here, and I'm so proud of her.
But so she's still she still feels the need to change her name.
Yes, we do. My current job in particular, I mean, Fagan is not super common, although there are 2 other Fagans in the Coast Guard unrelated to us, which is fun for everyone involved. But my job currently, I do have a lot of interaction with the workforce, and usually the beginning or the end of every conversation is like, are you? Or I'll get on the elevator here at headquarters and people are kind of looking at my name tag, and I'm like, yep, that's everything you're thinking is correct. So the running joke is my last name is Fagan, not Fagan, just to put a little distance between us as I sort of carve my own path in this organization. Yeah. So that's really it. Again, it's been very fun being co-located for a couple years. We've been co-located since 2018.
He was starting out in Pacific area, San Francisco. We endured the early dark days of the pandemic together.
Oh yes.
Yeah. Me helping run the organization as a 3-star, and Aileen just clicking away on her computer in the corner,
hanging out next to her.
That's such a sweet story. And I have to just kind of interject for a moment and say, I love mothers and daughters. I love mothers. I love daughters. And, a shout out, Henriette Klauser, MOE is on today. My mother, she's got Mother of Emily as her like name.
No, we love that.
So she's on here. And for you to say that you are following me, Mom, I love that. That's so endearing. And it reminds me of a story of, I had a teacher in high school who said, my mother, kind of like you said, Aileen, that it was your normal. You took it for granted that this is what was happening. So it was normal. My mother, a highly accomplished author, and I just thought that was normal. And one of my teachers was like, one day you'll stand on her shoulders and she wants you to. And I can see you right now that your mother wants you to continue to advance. And so I just want to reflect that back. It's just beautiful to see that between the 2 of you.
Yeah.
So thank you for that. No, please continue. Tell us any stories you have about your transformational change. I just wanted to share that.
So I'll talk a little bit about some of the work that we've stepped into since I took over. So I'm coming up on the conclusion of my first year as commandant. First, I've got to tell you, I worked as an executive assistant to Commandant to Thad Allen when he was here. I was serving the role of Vice Commandant when I stepped over into this job last June. And I somewhat naively, I now realize it's like, oh, I've had a front row seat to this. Like, I know things are going to accelerate a little bit. I had no idea.
Do you have your airplane mileage at this point?
No, I don't.
A couple laps around the world, at least in the first month, let alone at this point.
The pace and the acceleration in the way, you can measure it in airplane miles. I measure it in uniform demands. There's times I'm in 4 different uniforms in a day. We used to call them Zulu drills at the academy, change from uniform to the next in a minute or 90 seconds. I have done that multiple times, more times as commandant and then in the entirety of my career. I'm like, what has happened? Just was not expecting some of that. But the work that we've stepped into in the primary focus area is around workforce, transforming our talent management, transform the total workforce. And the point I make, so, a couple of things. First off, I recognize I embody the change that I'm talking about in the force. It's generational change, it's transformational change, and it's existential. If we don't make and challenge some of the assumptions around the talent management system. If we don't do it now, it won't matter that we've got the largest acquisition programs going on since World War II. Won't matter. Brand new polar security cutter. If I don't have a workforce to operate it, it's just a piece of steel. One of the basic assumptions that I have challenged and we're working to sort of evolve is the up or out system. All of our military services are operating it. The system is optimized. So it's on the enlisted side, it's not quite as rigid as the officer side, but it is optimized towards an 18-year-old out of high school with 0 life experience. Start at the bottom, come through Cape May, 8 or a 10-week program. We send you to school, make you smart in what your technical expertise is, and we take you out and you step onto a conveyor belt, you move forward. The officer side, very similar, very rigid. You miss a gate, and it's like, we don't call you a quitter, but you're out of the lifeboat, right? You miss a gate, you miss an experience, an operational experience, and we say, that's it. We're going to stop your career progression, and out you go. We cannot afford to do that. So the work that is going on around more responsive school opportunities, we have people come into the service who are fully accredited paramedics. Yet we send them through a 6-month course to learn how to be a health clinic technician. Why? So we've since done, but we're doing this right now as kind of a pickup game. We need to do more systematically internalize this, creating lateral opportunities. If you're a certified aircraft mechanic and you want to come in and help us repair helicopters on one flight, we enter a 4-year contract with you. And at the end of it, if you're happy with us, we're happy with you. We integrate you into the service. You're a pilot, lieutenant, flying an aircraft out on California. You love what you're doing. You want to do this for the next 10 years as a lieutenant. We need to let you do that as well. And at the end of that, if you're ready and you're looking for change and different opportunities, step back onto the conveyor belt and move forward. At the same time, we do need people. And so the system is also optimized that everybody that comes in as an officer aspires to hold my job. That is not true. I didn't aspire to hold my job when I came in. So, but continuing to provide paths forward so that you've got all of that diversity of experience and leadership. So those are, we're unpacking that, we're piloting things. I have a real sense of urgency because as we face the recruiting challenges that the other services are, we've got to do a better job retaining the people that we've got and making it easier for people to serve. And so we put policies in place that make it easier to retain women. The point I always make is it just makes it easier to retain workforce. Policies that are good for women and underrepresented minorities are just plain good for the workforce. And we shouldn't shy away from, we should not impose barriers that don't have any bearing on operational readiness for the service. Now, I'm going to ask Aileen to reflect on how well we seem to be doing, because I know where I want to go. I peer down into the organization, the frozen middle. It's insidious because that ice is crystal clear. I don't even know that I've peered through it. And I see the eager lieutenants ready to help bring it forward. But, there's cultural change, organizational change, behavioral change that needs to come as we keep bringing this forward.
Well, and I think I got kind of lucky. The job I'm in currently is working kind of tangentially on a project that would help improve various workforce processes. And so I spend a lot of time giving briefs about change and seeing the response from everyone. It's very encouraging that is where senior leadership wants to take us. I think when we used to back out in Pac area, when we were trapped on the island for a year and a half, we used to kind of play the game of if you were in charge, what would the things you want to change? The conveyor belt is definitely one of them that she talked about not having to be on it. And even though the things that I would come up with, it's all related to people. And because like she said, we can have the best, most beautiful cutters and highly technical and all those great things. And that's really important. But the people serving on them, the people serving in the building, all of that is just as important, if not more so. And I think, I have a lot of friends, married member to member with kids, and I see some of their struggles. I've helped shuttle kids from one parent to the other parent because just childcare doesn't open soon enough, or it's not close enough to a unit. Just all of that kind of stuff to see the senior leadership that we have right now really taking that and making that a priority is just so wonderful. And yeah, I definitely, I have seen the roadblocks as you brief some things up and people are like, no, you're just like, what?
Somebody told you at one point, change is hard.
Yes.
Yeah, it is.
And, yeah, or just, and it is, which that's not an incorrect statement, but, I look at my peer group, the lieutenants, that I'm around, and we all, we want to be a part of this organization. We want to be, we want to serve. But there's a lot of things that have changed. And the way we've done promotions and like our human resources has been in place since World War II.
Yeah.
The world is a different place now. And that's okay. That's great. There's some really wonderful things. I think too, just really, we have to get after this idea of what is success. I don't even think this is just a Coast Guard thing. I think this is something our society needs to really readjust is having a successful Coast Guard career being commandant, or is it showing up every day, doing what you love, giving back to the country you love, and being the best possible version of yourself for your people? And if that is the answer, which I think it should be, then we need to put the policies in place to do that. And so again, just having again, I am very biased that our commandant is my mother, but even if she wasn't, that message and that, her whole strategy on transforming talent management and really investing in our people it makes me want to stay in. People have been, I get asked, well, I'm due to transfer in a year. So people have been like, what's your next billet? But also people ask if I want to make a career out of this. And right now my answer is yes. If we can really make those changes and shape the workforce in a way that is, what you and I have kind of always talked about, then I will happily serve here until they tell me to go home. And I don't think there's anything better than that. It's just, like I said, it's a great organization and we're moving in the right direction. But yeah.
That's so awesome. I love it. It's so inspiring and so positive. I imagine you giving those briefs about change and just being all fired up and excited about it. And I also wonder, like, when you're giving a presentation like that, whatever the context is, are there times, and this is probably from my own career that I've felt this, but are there times that there are sometimes people who maybe by a decision become obsolete or become their skill set, the tool they're holding is no longer the tool for the job and they need to like pick up a different tool. I found that in littoral combat ship. I have my LCS and I had command of USS Manchester. That's the ship I have over my shoulder here. That was a transformative tour for me. That's why we picked this ship for this background for today. Because LCS was a brand new crew, brand new way of modernizing the Navy. We had a lot of sailors that needed to learn how to do something differently. And when I think about transformational change, I think, yeah, sometimes I have to look at people and tell them to pick up a different tool. I don't want to use the word obsolete, like, hey, you're obsolete. That's a harsh thing to tell somebody. But maybe in a career of personnel policy management, people's bureaucratic job becomes obsolete. So I would ask each of you actually to kind of maybe poke around that, if you could share any experiences with how you manage people who might feel like their tool is obsolete when you are talking about change.
Yeah, and it gets right at the heart of what makes it so challenging to do this kind of transformational change, because whether it's the tool that's obsolete or the individual, there's comfort in the known. And so for that, when we talk about the frozen mill, right, it tends to be, 05, 06 level, they're comfortable. What they have done to succeed to that point was what was needed to succeed at that point. You're now saying, hey, you need to step away from that and move over into this other different way of thinking. And I think of it in terms of ambiguity, and the ambiguity that is created with that kind of transformative change. And so, you would have faced it as a leader on your ship. That the old processes and tools aren't working. You know generally the direction you need to go, but you don't have clarity. As the leader, you don't have clarity on, we need to do, N through 10, and that'll work for us. And so The challenge becomes leading the group together to find those redefined processes and create the new tools that'll be needed to succeed in the new environment. And I saw this firsthand during the COVID pandemic, and I think this is true. Anytime you're facing substantial change, uncertainty, there are a handful of people who have a tendency to double down on process, on the old process. And that is super, super unhelpful. And it's particularly unhelpful if it's a senior person. And so, there is some goodness in the upper out system, and there is some goodness in the fact we rotate people, right? You're not stuck with that person for 10 years, but then creating leadership and development opportunities at the more junior levels to help people develop the tools to handle ambiguity and process and change, and be comfortable with the uncomfortable, right? So I get asked a lot as I talk about my priorities, or they'll say, my senior team will say to me, well, what's your risk tolerance? I said, my risk tolerance is really high. In fact, I know my risk tolerance is higher than theirs. And it's an interesting tension point as we're negotiating for, hey, you need to put down that old playbook and, design a new way of thinking. And it creates a lot of discomfort, and not everyone negotiates that change well. And so this is part of the reason, again, change is hard, and it just takes time. You got to keep dragging the organization forward. And eventually you shed the remnants of what's not working for you.
And I think too, it's really important to recognize, particularly when it comes to these changes within like the human resources and everything, is making it clear that just because it's not necessarily working anymore doesn't mean it wasn't okay when you went through it. It doesn't invalidate your own experience, or that you shouldn't have gotten as far as you did because you existed in this old system. It's not saying that. It's just saying that, the world in 2023 is very different than 2019, and is even more different than 1981 when you first joined. And so again, nothing wrong with what was happening in those points in time, but we've grown and we've learned, and it's time to make some updates, but again, making it clear it's not invalidating your own experience.
Yeah. So Aileen, it sounds like what you're saying is you approached that by like validating who they are, loving on who they are, and like, let's turn your vision to go somewhere bigger.
Exactly.
And then Admiral Fagan, it sounds like you recognize, hey, sometimes people are just going to double down, and that's a small group of people. And okay, how am I going to manage those people because they're doubling down? We have there's obviously many answers to this question. I struggle with it in many ways. I do see Admiral Richardson, you have your hand up. Sir, please join us. Go ahead and take yourself off mute.
Yeah. Hey, Linda, first, it's great to see you. And I tried to get in first to congratulate you when you became the service chief, but I just want to add that. And then Aileen, to see you two together. I mean, I want to go and join the Coast Guard. And I think
we're hiring. Yeah, we're hiring.
So, and I just wanted to contribute to this last topic, because it is so fundamental to transformational change, as you say, Linda, because what you want to do is do everything you can to, disarm the whole argument that people are going to be left behind by this change, right? And so part of that is, just as Aileen said, you're going to say, hey, everything you've done to date is so important. And then, as I think about a Coast Guard, a member of the Coast Guard, just as I was thinking about members of the Navy, you've invested so much in them to make them just guardsmen, right? So it's, whatever the onboarding process was, whether they were enlisted or officer, you've invested a lot into that. And that they know so much about that, right? So their character, you've done a lot to develop their character. They're interconnected with the rest of the Coast Guard. That's super valuable knowledge that the easiest thing to do is to retrain them to do something different, right? That's the absolute easiest. So fundamentally validating their value as a person, their value as a member of the Coast Guard, and then their value of everything they've contributed so far. And now, you've got the nicest way of saying, this is the new thing that we're going to ask you to do. And you're going to be awesome in that regard too. Don't be afraid. We're going to get through this together. Let's all breathe deeply. And so Linda, you've just got it nailed so much. And to seeing you two together, I get this great kind of fear of missing out, right? I want to join in and just be part of that. So like, congratulations. The two of you are just supernova positive energy.
Thanks, sir. Really appreciate that. It's great seeing you. And yeah, right. So like, I have just this sense of urgency, and to your point, it is easier to retrain people. I would love to see a broader conversation. So I'm talking about this in the context of the Coast Guard. We as services, as militaries, need to inspire the youth of the country to serve. Serve in uniform. And then, you know what? If you can start by joining the Navy and you want to come to the Coast Guard for a while and go back to the Navy, we need to develop a system and a process that makes that as fluid and easy as possible. You want to leave active duty and go to the reserves and come back? Do we need to think about some kind of a part-time status that allows you to work in uniform as if you were on full-time active duty 3 days a week? These are all tools that are going to need to be developed, so that, again, work schedule, these should not be barriers to those who want to serve the nation and wear the cloth of the nation.
I agree with you so strongly that we just have to eliminate or minimize those barriers. They're industrial age constructs, right? Yeah. And so we're moving on from that. The whole world's moving on, and the services need to do the same thing. Anyway, I'll go back on mute and just enjoy listening.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you so much. And I see the audience is already popping up. I've got Andrea Howard and Will Johnson who have questions. So Will, I'll start with you. Go ahead.
Great. Thanks, Captain. And good morning, Admiral. Will Johnson, Air Station Kodiak. Appreciate taking the time for this call. And I've got a question that's an excellent follow-on to Captain Bassett's question there. And it's more broad in trying to get changes done when it's not specifically about people, it's also about organizational shifts. In your position and with the information that you have available to you, I'm sure there's likely significant big changes that you recognize as being absolutely necessary, but they're so wildly outside the box or new that they would outright fail if you attempted to implement them in one fell swoop, either due to policy, process, organizational politics, or just because we've always done it that way. How do you use change management to try to get buy-in for these significant changes so that they're both palatable and sustained when you only hold the baton for a finite period?
Yeah, so I stepped into this job believing that as an organization, so, there wasn't that long ago, we were only a $3 billion a year organization. We're at, the 24 president's budget is has us at 13.5. I'm on record publicly as saying that needs to be 20 billion by 2033. I stepped into this believing that we had already outpaced our governance structure, particularly here in the headquarters building. We're in there's a lot of legacy remnants to the sort of geographic based organizations that we were as a revenue cutter service, as a life-saving service, lighthouse establishment. And I continue to see data points every day. We were just talking about one with our congressional folks. If you happen to see the hearings from this week, you'll know the skewering I took over a certain bridge in Florida. It is a symptom of a system that is not sort of optimized towards the political and fiscal realities that we are operating in right now. I know we need to do that work. I've intentionally did not lead with it because I need the senior team to feel the same sense of urgency and see the same friction and failure points that I'm feeling as it aggregates at my level, so that as we step into that work, because that work will take longer than I have a tenure for, so that as we step into that work, there is already buy-in on, hey, if we don't do this, we won't continue to succeed as an organization. So I'm a little bit of just sort of patience right now on my part, but there is work to be done around governance, so that as we do gain resourcing and fiscal resourcing, that we've got the capacity to exercise. And this is whether you're talking acquisitions, civil engineering, operating policy, human resources policy, like we've been talking about. It pretty much crosses every element of the organization. And the operating structure that we're in the organization is still serving us well, but the policy and program structure at headquarters is we're outpacing it now.
Raj, thanks, Admiral. Appreciate it. Yeah, I know anytime that you're throwing out, like, wow, I was stoked when you first came in and you were like, we're going to be swinging for the fences and then going outside the ballpark with these crazy ideas. I'm like, that sounds great. But I know reality exists where there's not going to be a warm welcome embrace for all those ideas. Like, if somebody came in and just like as an example said, like, the future of the Coast Guard is fewer cutters and more sensors, like, you would get organ rejection from the afloat community because, like, no, you said less boats. That's not a thing we do. We're the Coast Guard.
Yeah.
But have to work your way towards those big changes in a manner so that it wasn't just like the crazy last boss's idea where the new boss is like, no, we're going to go back to the old way. So setting that consistent handoff up so that it's sustainable is a challenge. So
yeah, this is the don't spook the herd, right?
Yeah,
you still
exactly.
you need the herd with you when you implement these changes.
That's right. And this all goes back to your up and out logic that sometimes we need. I mean, I look back to, you know, as a nuclear Navy, we had Admiral Rickover stayed for a very, very, very long time because we needed some leaders to just stay the course for some of these transformational changes. And maybe in the up and out recasting, we look at some of that. Maybe you stay longer to kind of oversee some of these changes, or raise a daughter who's going to do it for you.
I got some time.
Yeah. Resistance is futile.
Exactly.
Well, you got me in the service.
Love it. Andrea Howard was our last guest on Lean On Navy, and she's coming from PCU, New Jersey, a nuclear submarine officer. Andrea, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks so much, Captain Bassett, for organizing another powerhouse panel and group of folks that are here today listening. And I'll tell you what, coming off of duty and having this conversation on my drive home in Hampton Roads is the burst of energy that I need. But first, I just want to say to fellow LT, there is something in the water out of the Coast Guard Academy from classes 15 and onward. So I was finally up in Groton this past summer for department head school and got to tour the grounds for the first time. There's a gal from classes 17 who was in town visiting family, and she showed me around. I've just interacted with some gals from these year groups, and your energy is something else. Like, we gals in the Navy are just trying to keep up with you all. So whatever's in the water up there in New London side, maybe it's just the geography being on that side, vice versa. I don't know what it is, but you guys are awesome. And so just keep on keeping on. So I just wanted to say that I'm so impressed with all the peers that I've met that are in the Coast Guard from around this grade that we are. And then Commandant, for you, ma'am, you know, hearing you talk about when you entered the force and the senior leadership that you had was predominantly women who were lieutenant commanders. It's resoundingly similar to where we are in the submarine force right now, where we very awesomely had, you know, Amber Cohen, who was the guest before me on Lean On Navy, who's the first executive officer, lieutenant commander, who's, you know, reported to a submarine. And so while it is so important, like you said, to really focus on, you know, competencies and to highlight the value of the institution as these ladies are climbing the ranks, I'm curious what your biggest lesson learned was, though, as you entered the fold and saw these ladies continue to climb the ranks. How do you leverage the position that you have as you're climbing the ranks, really from that 04 level and above, to be that best leader for the folks behind you?
Yeah, so as you know, Aileen was reflecting that she's worked almost exclusively for women as she's come up, and I'm like, I've worked for one female in the totality of my career. It was Vivian Cray, who's the vice commandant, and I was, you know, serving as the EA. And
you were a captain.
I was a captain. So all of us have this responsibility. This isn't just for women. It's not just for minorities. And because this is a journey. Leadership is a journey. I didn't wake up 18 months ago and get a phone call out of the blue from the Secretary of Homeland Security and have him say, hey, we want you to be commandant, right? There was a process that got me there, and there were opportunities that I was afforded. And so one, for all of us, you need to look behind you and actively mentor and bring people forward, bring the talent forward. And particularly women, and where I see it is as women get to that 10, 12-year point, family pressures, kids, lifestyle, help, you know, talk openly about what some of the, you know, the options are and the struggles. Now, and for, you know, the majority males who many hold key strategic positions, you know, the CO on your submarine, they have an active role in this as well. one, creating the culture and environment where women want to serve and thrive, and then two, creating those opportunities. One of the things in the Coast Guard, and we're come a long ways to breaking this mold, but like there's a very rigid, hey, in order to be a flag officer, you have to have had an 06 command, you need exactly 1.2 master's degrees, you have to be an executive assistant, a chief of staff, and you got to take these really hard jobs that make you come in at 6 and you can't go home till 10. And if you survive that crucible, well, we can probably trust you to be a flag officer. But we need to unpack that. This is about talent and leadership and opportunity and being less rigid about it. But each of us, wherever we're sitting in our organizations, and particularly in communities where you've got women underrepresented or other minorities are underrepresented, actively engaging the talent coming behind you to inspire others to see, hey, this is possible. And not only is it possible, you can thrive and there's incredible opportunity here, but also acknowledge it takes time. You don't just wake up as a submarine CO not having gone through through the work and through the professional development that takes you to that point.
Fantastic. Did you, Aileen, before I go to the next question, did you want to add anything to that?
No, well, I will say we just did the last month. We did the all 4 of the female 4-stars that are currently serving did a panel.
Yeah, with Nora O'Donnell.
Some of you, might have seen it with Nora O'Donnell, and then they did the CBS interview. But what was so interesting in listening to that panel is every single one of them just talked about, like getting people seats at the table. And then when you have a seat at the table, making sure you're getting all the voices. And that's just another way to make sure we're bringing forward, that next generation of talent. And I also that was, we had pretty much every service represented, and the fact that the experiences were so similar, and having a good boss that trusted you guys and got you a seat at the table, and then paying that forward down the road. So that was a really unique opportunity and very fortunate to have been a part of it.
Yeah, so much of this is not just about the individual, but the whole organization giving you space for that, so that when you get to the table, you can get all those voices in. So just love it. One question just came through chat. I'm just going to go ahead and then I'll call on you, George. I see your hands up. Captain Howell over there in Hawaii. But one question before I call on Captain Howell, we have a question from the audience from Sid Mers, who's asking about risk taking. I know you shared your ability to take risk was very high. Her question has to do with others might perceive you as a pest if you're always trying to be constantly changing and risky. When I think of risk, I think of, well, that means you're willing to have some failure. So how have you dealt with that? When you sometimes risk and the percentages don't fall into your odds. So just curious about being a risk taker. You might share your reflections on that.
Yeah, so it's interesting. My risk tolerance has actually increased as I've gained in seniority. And so at this point, there are occasionally mornings I wake up and I go, oh yeah, no, I am still the Commandant. Right? And theoretically I am in charge, although there are times with a big bureaucracy, I'm like, wow, how did we end up here? I thought I had said X and we are not down that path at all, but the struggle is real for everybody. So, for me, with regard to managing risk, so it's about defining in-state and desired outcomes, and then broadening the aperture because at this point I'm senior enough, I cannot and should not be offering solutions. I probably I do limit the organizational outcome if I dictate a solution. So it's setting the stage for the organization and the team to be comfortable with the risk portfolio that they're working through. And there are some third rails. If I happen to know what one is, I have an obligation to say, no, look, we're not gonna go down this. So for example, grooming standards. It comes up all the time. So I know in the Navy, right, there's some discussion around just gender neutral as a policy, gender neutral uniforms. So then you extend that to grooming standards, general neutral grooming standards. So we had some little vignettes as a senior leadership team. We did this a year ago. And it's like, okay, so where are the red lines here? Beards. Eventually the services will all go to beards. We'll do it all at the same time. But the red line, Man buns. Man buns were not popular. Ponytails good, man buns no. So it's kind of a tongue-in-cheek example, but right, this is helping to understand where those like really uncomfortable points are, help get the team focused around then, hey, we can work through some of the rest of this risk portfolio. Yeah. We aren't doing man buns in the Coast Guard.
No, but I love it. Let's go to that edge and find out where do you get okay, Aileen, anything on that before I call on George?
No, I think still, I am still junior enough that if I'm taking too much of a risk, I think I'm a little off path. But I've made mistakes and had senior like leaders that let me make those mistakes as a way of sort of figuring out my own risk comfort levels, which I think is really important and so key in leadership. But yeah, it's a good example to have of being willing to take risks, even if it's, ask the question. And I think your point too of this is like not, we're famous in the military for not asking why, but I do think there's some value. And it doesn't mean that by explaining the set of the circumstances as why we're making a change, like, so you're not seeming like a pest, really explaining the reason why. It doesn't, I have never then pushed back if I'm just like, hey, can you just walk me through this? And somebody walks me through it, and I'm like, okay, I'll go do it. And yes, there's a time and place for aye, sir, aye, ma'am. Got it. We are a military institution. But when you can take that extra 2 seconds and explain the thought process and the decision, why not? It gives you that buy-in. It gives you that input and is make it easier.
Ownership.
Yeah.
Awesome. I see we have 3 more questions and I got 9 minutes. I know both of you have to cut off the top of the hour.
Speed
round. I'm going to go. Okay, speed round. We'll start with George and then Admiral and then Rachel. I thought the order I thought your hands go. Go ahead, George.
Hey, thanks, Emily and Admiral and Aileen. Thanks for spending the hour with us here. This is awesome. My question, going back to the CBS interview with Nora O'Donnell, the 4 of you were asked specifically about being women and experienced discrimination coming up through the ranks. Almost all of your examples were very overt examples, and you opened up with an overt example here. My question is, and for Aileen too, and really the women on the group here, do we have it about right now? Are there any blind spots that we as men leaders in the Navy, and I'm a post-command submarine captain, so bringing women through submarines the last 10 or so years, do we have any blind spots with that? Are there any more covert discrimination things that we're doing that we don't know that we're doing? Is there anything that you wish we would stop doing? And I'll give you an example. As women were coming around the submarines, I would come home to my wife and I would say, well, we're having these women report on submarines. And I would say the word females, and she would hit me in the back of the head and say, stop saying females, because it almost sounded like that I was categorizing them as females, as like this group of objects that are showing up to the submarine, rather than the people who are women showing up to the submarine. And it makes a huge difference in how you're showing up with them when you do it that way. And I didn't even realize that I was doing that. So is there anything else out there like that that's kind of still lingering that we need to work on?
Yeah, so this is funny, as you described that shift in thinking. So Secretary Mayorkas, as he, last year, and you'll still do this, for celebrating my leadership as the Commandant, he'll say it's not that she's the first female leader. She's a leader, the best leader, who happens to be a female, right? It's that shift in thinking. So I would tell you, and I know all of the women on here will nod when I say this, the thing that continues to happen, I've had this happen in a certain building in the Pentagon with my peers, where we're going around the table, all say something, and there's some head nodding, and then you'll go a couple more, and the same thing gets said, slightly different way, but by a male peer. And now all of a sudden it's really interesting. And so there's still, fighting against those biases. And it's not just a gender thing, right? So for others who have, bring diversity of thought and view and perspective, ensuring that you remain open and listening and learning, and because it may be uncomfortable, some of the perspective that diversity brings. And then frankly, just acknowledging, like you've done with your question, that, hey, I may have blind spots that I really need to be actively working to avoid.
Awesome.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah. Thanks for the question, George. Rachel, go ahead.
Oh, thank you, Rachel Lawrence. And ma'am, I think that was the perfect lead-in to my question about not just for women, but for others as well. So I'm the mom of a non-binary teen, and I love it when people break their silence and are advocates and allies. And that was on display this week in front of the Senate when Admiral Gilday spoke up for a non-binary sailor who, in my view, is getting unfairly targeted and discredited for having pride in their service. And breaking the silence matters. I have wanted since 2019 to ask or encourage the Commandant of the Coast Guard, whoever that happens to be, and that be you now, to please show advocacy for Commander Kimberly Young-McClear. Her experience is very similar to my own. I am shaking right now from my own experience affecting me. I told Emily I rearranged my schedule to be here, and it was to deal with the PTSD that I am dealing with from my years of reprisal for speaking up for myself. And it's very similar to what Dr. Young-McClear has suffered in silence from her leadership.
Yeah. So, retaliation, reprisal, retribution, it's inconsistent with our core values in the Coast Guard. It has no place. And when substantiated, I'm committed to, full accountability. I also, in the vein of, as people find courage to come forward and be their authentic selves, your gender, race, gender identity, those should not be barriers to service. And so creating the environments where all can thrive and contribute and are valued, it's critical. It's critical to recruiting. It is readiness. And I view it in that perspective. We have room to grow, room to move forward. This is a journey as well, and we will continue down the path to be a better organization tomorrow than we are today.
Thank you so much. I mean, I know you start out by saying, change is hard. I mean, change is hard. I mean, all this is hard. And some of the examples people are bringing up, this is some hard stuff we're dealing with, and we're asking ourselves, are we getting it right? And I love how you started this, Admiral Fagan, by talking about the courage that Owen Siller, you said, had to change the organization. And so sometimes when we step out and take that first step, we're taking risks. We're going to have some courage. So much ground that you covered here. I had 3 more questions I wanted to ask, but you know what? We're about top of the hour, and I don't even want to start a new question because I feel like there's so much meat in what you've presented today. I'm just going to turn over to you both to just invite you to close out, and really just to thank you both.
Yeah, right. Thank you. Thanks everyone for joining us. Emily, thank you for just the opportunity to share some perspectives. And I am super excited about where we are as a Coast Guard. What the opportunity is in front of us. We are hiring. I know it's a big Navy crowd, but great opportunities in the Coast Guard. But really, it's incumbent on all of us to inspire the youth in the country to service, whether that's in uniform or in government. Frankly, our democracy requires it. I'm committed to creating an environment and a culture here in this organization, in this military, that makes us an attractive employer, and that where people want to serve, where they're thrive, they're valued, they're safe, they're heard. I want for every member of the Coast Guard what I want for my daughter, which are those things. And so for me, it's no more complicated than that. I want to create an environment where she's just got nothing but opportunity and a great experience. So again, thank you. Thanks, Emily. Aileen?
Thanks, Captain, so much. And I mean, I can't say it better than she did. And, I can speak to the really wonderful environment that I have been fortunate to grow up in, and then to now grow up as an adult and, as a contributing member of society. We are hiring. I think we've both said that. So we've definitely hit our recruiting shout outs for the event. And I am, just very grateful to be here. I love getting to do this stuff with Mom and kind of fight some of my own imposter syndrome when we do these. So I'm just so grateful. And just any opportunity where we create these spaces for open and honest conversation just moves us that much further down the field. So thank you so much, Captain. We really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you both so much. A little round of applause from everyone. Just thank you all. We have no other way to I give you a coin or a shake, but virtual world of today. I hope all of us, this is a platform we got to learn more about the Coast Guard, and we got to learn about what you do, and just to see how all of us can really serve our country. So thank you.
All right. Thank you. Have a great weekend, everyone.
All right.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye. I'm going to go to stop recording. I'm always so bad at figuring out how to stop recording. Stop recording.